you. Good morning. Kia ora, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou. All right. Welcome to our presentation meeting for Tuesday, the 3rd of February. I don't know where January's gone, you know, it's just like the years sort of marching away on us, but it's wonderful. I know we've got a presentation here in front of us from the Huronui Biodiversity Trust, so we do welcome you warmly, but I just got a few matters just to get ourselves framed up for our meeting, so if you can just bear with us for a moment while I do that, and then we'll have a quick introduction around the room to yourselves and fellow councillors, so thank you, but I do warmly welcome you all here. Just for matters, should we need to exit the building, and out there today, so I'm hoping we don't need to do that today, but out the door that you entered, or the door here to my left, and our assembly point is over on the grass in front of St John's. Councillors, I have received an apology today from Councillor Tom Davies. He's unwell and not able to be with us today, so can I please have someone move and second that we receive this? Thank you, Fiona. Second, receive an apology from Councillor Tom Davies. All in agreement with that, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against? It's carried. Thank you. We normally start our agenda today with our affirmation, and whilst we haven't got any decisions to be made today, I will read this because I think it's important for our guests to understand how we get ourselves sort of centred into the business that we have in front of us. So a normal council meeting does start with this affirmation, and we state that we pledge that we will faithfully and impartially use our skills, wisdom and judgment throughout the discussions and deliberations ahead of us today, in order to make responsible and appropriate decisions for the benefit of the Huronui district at large. We commit individually and as council to the principles of integrity and respect, and to upholding the values that we believe distinguish and enrich our district. Thank you. Councillors, we have two presentations today, and I'm guessing that there is no, or is there a conflict of interest with any of the items on our agenda today? Thank you. And Graham, we have a recording device and we're being live streamed.
Yes,
thank you. Councillors, you will have received the information that has come through from the Huronui Biodiversity Trust. So I just want to make sure that you've all received that information.
I'll go and get it.
Okay. Do you want a copy, Vince?
Yes,
got a spare copy here. So you've all had a chance to read that because it might help frame up what we're hearing from the trust as well. So everybody's received that. Thank you. So I think that's all I need to do to get us into the groove of today's agenda, but I warmly welcome members of the Huronui Biodiversity Trust, the members here that have been great contributors to our district for a long time, but so it's lovely to have you here. But I think maybe before I get you to introduce yourselves, perhaps it would be helpful to go around the room and councillors to introduce themselves to you, perhaps just introductions and where you sit or where you live within the district, and then I'll hand over to you, Belinda, and you can introduce your team and we can take it from there. We've got about 30 minutes, I think, set aside for your presentation, so presentation and some questions at the end of that. So is that okay with you? Okay, so Brett, I'm going to start at your end today, so thank you.
My name is Brett Jones, and I reside here south.
Chris Scarlett from up Mount Lyford Way. Been farming and building up that way for 25 years.
Vince Staley, councillor for the Eastwood Topping. Robbie Broughton, half my life in Valley, half my life in Amberley, and currently in Amberley.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Fiona Harris, we farm in Waipara and we live in Belkin, and I've been around the table for a wee while.
Thank you.
Hi, Dave Hislop, dairy farmer, Westwood. Chris Carthy, Pyramid Valley, Westwood.
Lifestyle block, thank you. Southwood.
And Steve Hutch, Southwood.
and we do have, of course, Hamish is our CE, and Judith is one of our exec team members here today as well, listening in on this presentation. And as well, welcome Rima as well, and Kevin as a member of the public. So I think that's it. From Southwood Community Board, exactly. So Belinda, I might just hand over to you and perhaps do an introduction of your team and then head into the presentation and 20 minutes and then 10 minutes for Q&A, is that right? Or thereabouts? Yeah, okay. So we won't get
Thank you very much.
that. Thank you.
Sure, everybody. I'll just stand up. Thank you very much for having us to give you a presentation about what Huranui Biodiversity Trust does and what we aspire to do with a collaboration with the council and other organisations in this district. I'm Belinda Mears, I'm chair of the trust, and on my team, our trustees are Sarah Hiller and Mike Bennett, Jill Dalmer. Absent is Jamie McFadden and Richard Shaw. We also have a coordinator, Philippa Curtis. We've all got links to the district. I now actually live in Christchurch, but definitely have roots here. And just want to acknowledge Kevin Roach, whom you'll know too, North Pegasus Coast Care, and Rima, who has with us really helped work together, especially on the Huranui Weed Busters initiative, but yeah, we work very closely together too, so we have her perspective and her expertise. So Mike is going to really do the bulk of our presentation, and then we definitely welcome questions and anything else that comes up after that. We'd be happy to discuss. So Mike.
All right, thank you. All right, thank you everyone for making time today to hear what we have to say about biodiversity in Huranui. Basically, I will try and keep it reasonably short. We anticipated talking for about 10 minutes. I'll see how I go with that aspiration, because we hope there are many questions. Biodiversity is a hugely, well, it's a huge part of Huranui, just geographically. Like you've got biodiversity all over the place, almost everywhere you go in Huranui. Yeah, 10 minutes doesn't really do justice to that, but we'll do our best. So what I'll work through today is just why the Huranui Biodiversity Trust, what we are, and then some stuff about what we do and some of the work that we've done. So really the why, I guess is, for the founders, and I guess for us, all of us are very, very interested in biodiversity in Huranui, obviously, but we feel there's a lack of appreciation and knowledge of it. There's lots of confusion. It has, unfortunately, through the kind of way the RMA process works or drives people to respond, it's become a really politically contested issue, which in our view hasn't really been helpful for biodiversity at all. And yeah, and I will leave time for questions at the end. What we try to do is, it's sort of all up there really. We try to be a voice for biodiversity in terms of trying to help people understand it and hopefully to inspire action, because action is really very important. You can have all the rules on paper in the world, but until someone actually does something, well, you haven't really achieved much. Until something changes in terms of what people do, what's actually happened. We have aimed to overcome fragmentation. So what we found is a lot of people were all working in their little area, whether it was their farm or their little corner of the community, but there seemed to be not a lot of coordination or filling in of the gaps as to what was going on. There's also an important interface of agencies like Huranui District, the Department of Conservation, Environment category, which we do seem to spend a lot of time on. Above all, I think personally, I think that if I really pushed, I think that Huranui Biodiversity Trust are honest brokers. We are independent. We don't have any particular agenda other than biodiversity itself. And if you want to know about biodiversity in Huranui, we don't know everything, But I think the trust and the resources we have are probably a really good place to start with those questions. And if we run out of things to say, I'm sure we can help steer you in the right direction if you have more questions. There is a lack of honest brokers in New Zealand. There's so many conflicts of interest everywhere you go with expertise on particular topics. There's always agendas, there's always that stuff. So I think that honest broker role is really important. Now, on to the next slide. Who are we?
If you feel more comfortable, Cynthia.
Okay.
Do whatever feels, you know.
Yeah, I
we're
might be.
pretty relaxed style, here, Michael, so you know, if it
Yeah,
feels more
table's a bit
comfortable for
short.
you, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so all of us have a really, you know, we do come from a diverse range of backgrounds. I basically come from a time working for councils or dealing with councils through roles in Federated Farmers and Environment Canterbury in the past. And latterly I've moved into just doing project management with catchment groups or local organisations. So most of my work time is actually now spent in South Canterbury, but I have had quite a connection to Huranui in the past. Jill is a farmer up at Waiha, has a background in community trusts. Belinda is originally from locally around here in Huranui and has had quite a background working with community groups and whatnot, and has kind of become part of the trust through that. Sarah is involved in forestry and particularly native forestry through forest management. Richard and Nikki Murray own a lifestyle block up at Blythe Valley, and they're doing a huge amount of restoration up there in the Blythe, and they're at the heart of what's now called the Blythe Valley Catchment Group. So they've been doing really impressive work, and Richard has been really helpful actually. He brings a engineering background, which we find really useful, just getting stuff done. Jamie McFadden, I'm sure most of you know anyway. Jamie is a long-standing champion of biodiversity in Huranui, and he also owns a native plant nursery. All of us have what I'd say a very, we've got a diverse set of skills, but we also have quite diverse values. We often have robust debates, you know, in our meetings and with each other, because we do come from all different sorts of points of view. And I think that those skills and that ability to have robust conversations are actually really important. We often challenge each other. And obviously we've got people who can't be part of the trust but support us. So Kevin Roche, who's seated over here, who does work down along the coast. James and Suzanne Lambie are ecologists based up in Marlborough, but they've done quite a lot of work in Huranui in the last few years. Billy Bartram, who's our link to Huranui District Nankia Group, and Miles and Gillian Giller. Miles recently retired from Huitu Trust, so he's got a huge amount of knowledge and connection and passion for biodiversity, and is a really valued advisor to us actually because just of how much he knows. Then on to what we do. So at the moment, most of our work is about education and outreach. We find that having educational workshops on biodiversity, running field days to show what people are doing, developing information and resources, which I'll talk about in a minute, and just networking and liaison with groups and being a bit of a connector is what we've kind of fallen into at the moment. We don't do stuff, we don't hold covenants like, you know, Big Exponential Conservation Trust does, or employ full-time advisors on farm. We are much smaller than that at this stage. Next. So the HubZat, so this is the Huranui Biodiversity Zones of Action resource. So hopefully you've had an opportunity to read this. I know it's a lengthy document and there's quite a lot to it, but where the HubZat came from, it actually is an idea that James Lambie and I originally had when we were trialling biodiversity management plans in Huranui. And what we found is that if you took an angle with a biodiversity management plan of just focusing on where are the attributes we need to protect and what are they like, what are their levels of significance and all that, it became very difficult and time consuming to do a biodiversity management plan. And also there was a huge amount of variation from one property to another. But in our view, and this is a view that's been shared by a lot of other people now, threats to biodiversity and the opportunities for action are much less variable across different land types in Haranui. So the threats to biodiversity and opportunities for action tend to be very, very similar from one patch of, tussock hill country with Matagari regenerating in it to the next patch of tussock hill country with Matagari regenerating in it. The values might be quite different, but the threats and the basic opportunities for action are kind of consistent across various land types. So what we've done is we've mapped up Haranui into land types based on threats and opportunities, and a really short description for each land type of what is there. And we hope that that can be in the future used as a resource for farmers if they're preparing a farm environment plan and are wondering how to integrate biodiversity. Where do I start? We hope that it will capture people's knowledge, so the knowledge of people like Jamie and Miles Giller and James Lambie has been pulled into this resource, and it actually captures their knowledge concisely in one place so that it's available for future generations. But above all, I think what it represents is, when I first started learning about biodiversity, when I first came to Haranui all those years ago, I knew next to nothing about biodiversity. I really didn't understand what the fuss was about at all. And it would have been really good to me personally, because I like to read stuff, that's how I am. If I had something like this available where I could go, okay, this is trustworthy, and I can go and read this and refer to this and know this is a good place to start. It's not complete knowledge at all, but certainly I think it hopes people will help people not go down the wrong rabbit holes of when they're wanting to learn about what's there and what they might be able to do. Next one. Recently, in the past year or so, we've had a real push with weeds and pests. The more that we've gone into Haranui, the more we've realised that the problem with feral pests, so this is your feral deer and pigs, feral predators, and infestation of weeds is actually really, really bad in Haranui. And it's no one's particular fault, it is nature at work. And very often, once you get away from a grazed platform, nature becomes the dominant actor. It's not really people anymore. And unless unless some more attention is paid to that, then biodiversity in Haranui is almost inevitably going to decline. It's quite a grim picture, really. So accordingly, we've taken on that challenge and have tried to promote the cause of better coordination and collective action around managing weeds and pests. We've started to have a bit of a campaign on problem weeds of Haranui. We've tried to encourage or seed the idea of farmers or multiple farms joining up together to try and manage feral pests at landscape scale. And there's been some work that's been done up at Leader Road. So that picture there, it's a pig trap. And that's basically a remotely observed pig trap, which is very, very heavy duty. And the way that you run them is this particular way to do them so that you can get the entire mob of pigs. So they'll spend about a week baiting these traps and pre-baiting until the whole herd is actually going in there, and then finally they'll trigger the trap remotely. So it's quite it's been engineered basically to kill pigs. It's not just someone having a go at some pigs. It's a methodical approach where they're trying to eliminate pigs from an area and just work through areas. It's a it all hangs on landowner goodwill and people wanting to commit to that. And I think that trust in that there is something to do here, and the trust in your whole idea of looking after biodiversity, I think that's really very important and needs to be cared for better. I've already mentioned the Blythe Valley Catchment Group, so you can see Richard. I think
It's a wilding pine.
is that Richard getting a wilding pine?
It's Craig.
Oh, it's Craig, sorry.
That's on Richard, yeah, it's Richard's.
Richard's place.
That's a wilding.
So yeah, that's that'll be the Blythe Valley Catchment Group doing what they do, and
It's the Jed,
is that the JED?
yeah.
All right.
Cheviot,
All right.
Mm.
And
Woolshed Creek.
We've also started Huranui Weed Busters with the support of Rima Herber. And that's, I think that picture down there is the Huranui Weed Busters, having a Weed Busters Day, which we try and do about once a month. This is just some examples of our worst weeds in Huranui campaign that we're starting up. Lastly, I'll go through to an example of action. The way that our different activities all fit together, what we really hope to do is influence people's hearts and minds, how they identify with biodiversity and how they respond. My main involvement with Huranui started up with the braided riverbed bird nesting islands on the Huranui and Waia rivers. So the birds that nest on these islands are all endangered to some degree. Their future prognosis isn't all that great without human intervention because they're ground nesting birds and they have no ability to really, they've got no adaptations to feral pests, cats particularly, and hedgehogs. There's a whole smorgasbord of feral pests that has a go of them. And so once I became aware of this issue, it kind of just sucked me in, like I just, came a bit of a, this has got to be, I slowly realised that if no one keeps flying the flag for braided riverbed birds, who is actually going to do it? Is someone else going to do it? Well, maybe not, And so that kind of started out with me with the trust. I basically started getting involved with the trust about 4 or 5 years ago. We ran a field day at the Shark's Tooth Island. The reason we ran it, frankly, is because there had been some funding to do trapping and to maintain a river channel between the mainland and the island for about 3 years. But that funding was coming to an end and it was just off the radar. With all the disruptions and changes at Environment Canterbury, who were the key funder, it had just been kind of forgotten about. And the birds are going to be forgotten about as well. So we ran a field day. Then we started going there, and then post the field day managed to jostle a couple of people at ECAN into arranging some funding to continue that project. So just maintaining the island, keeping the island a bit higher so the floods don't wipe out the colony as much. And then we went there with the Weed Busters last year well, I've been there for the last 2 years to clean up the lupins and that keep coming back on the island to keep it clean. So what's effectively happened to me is that Shark's Tooth Island has kind of become part of who I am, and that's just what happens to people once they start to engage with biodiversity and are kind of encouraged and realise that there's something to do. So what we hope is that biodiversity becomes more appealing and more people get involved. Lastly, we are seeking funding. All of us are very committed to the trust and what we're doing. All of us put in large amounts of voluntary time and we really enjoy it. It's really good. But we do require funding to be sustainable. It can't just carry on as a continuous voluntary effort forever. And I guess that's something we should say while we're here today is we could use funding as a trust. And we will keep trying from all sorts of different places to locate funding. And it would be very remiss if also we didn't acknowledge the contribution the council already makes. So you fund Rima's work, which we found to be very, very, very useful and very encouraging. It's an invaluable connection to the council, but she's also just really down to earth, has common sense ideas and commits and helps. So we'd like to acknowledge Rima as well and acknowledge you for keeping that going. It's very good. Our final word is we do continuously, we've got the wrong date on. We've got the Weeds workshop on the 28th of February. And we'd encourage you to come to that because we think that'll be a really interesting workshop. It's about weed biocontrol and
Not just biocontrol.
yeah, weeds and weed.
Oh, weeds,
biocontrol.
sorry, yeah.
It's biocontrol for invasive exotic weeds. And so there's a lot of work that Landcare Research do to try and find, suitable species and then release them. Biocontrol is going to be really important, basically. you know, it's going to be really hard to hold the line with the weed issue in Hurunui. I'm not saying we should give up. I think people should do it, you know, control weeds as much as they can. But it's a real ongoing effort, and once you understand the scale of the task, as we're starting to, it is really quite daunting. So yeah, biocontrol. And lastly, you're all welcome to attend open meetings of the Hurunui Biodiversity Trust, or to stump a council member perhaps who is our connection to the council. We'd really welcome that kind of relationship if there's the opportunity for that. All right, we should open it up unless there's any other comments.
That's great, thank you, Michael, for that. I guess it was a suite of information there, and I just also want to acknowledge when you talked about funding, you know, our contestable funding that we have available. I think many of the groups that you've highlighted have access funding through that contestable fund for predator control and such like. So yeah, it's important, but we can always do more. And you know, I think I'm grateful that we have committed volunteers that are actually sort of helping to highlight and see where we can partner or move closer to achieve the results that you're seeking. So thank you for coming along today and giving us that overview, I guess. Councillors, there may be some questions on what you've read, what you've heard, and I'm happy to receive those through the chair now. If there is any, Pauline, I'll go to you first and then Chris.
Thank you, through the chair. Thanks very much for that presentation and for the information that came through earlier. Very good question, well, not really, but what's the venue for the this week's workshop?
Amberley School.
Amberley School, thank you.
Yeah, and so there are actually three presenters. As Mike mentioned, Arno Katia coming from Manaki Whenua or Bioeconomy Science now. We've got Dr. John Clements, who is he's a botanist and very, very knowledgeable. He's working in Christchurch alongside ECAN to help communities and individuals with their gardens to really recognise and understand the importance of putting the right thing in your garden and getting rid of the wrong thing, because about 85% of invasive weeds in our environment actually jump the garden fence, apparently. So yeah, that we want to hear more about how he's managing that program in Christchurch and how we can adapt it here. And then there's Noel Crump, who's ECAN biosecurity officer based in Cheviot. And he's got a lot of on-the-ground knowledge about where we're going with our weed control and what are some most effective methods, including drone. So that'll be really interesting. Amberley School, and then a site visit to the Old Man's Beard site somewhere near Double Corner.
So you talked about the date being incorrect. So what is the correct date for that?
The 28th.
Okay, sorry,
It is the
I was
28th.
wrong about that.
You gave me
Looking
that. Momentary panic.
Okay, that's cool. So we're
Thank you.
28th of February at the Amberley School for the workshop, and it
Yeah,
starts
we
at
would like registrations because we're
12:45.
information. Thank you.
Okay, so maybe if that invitation could come to
Yes.
send that out to councillors and then they can respond if you're looking for RSVP. Could we get that as an action from today? Thank you. That'd be great. Thank you. Chris, you had a quick question?
I
I'm just
have
mindful
a
of time as
question,
well.
thank you through the chair. I've read your document, thank you for that. I spent some time reviewing, and I farm in a biodiverse manner in my small block as well and have done for 18 years for organic, so I get it. The question I have is, what do you think in regards to our feral pests is the worst that we're dealing with at the moment? For me, it's possum. I'm just asking what your thoughts would be.
Yeah, I wish Jamie was here because he gets
Yeah.
out, but
I can answer to the point. They're all pretty bad. They're definitely a worry, and also pigs, because they do very extensive damage. So yeah, possums are as well, and there's been some interesting stats. If Richard was here, who's been running trapping at the Blythe Valley catchment group, and they've extended a couple of their groups to, I think, Waikari group, my Greta Valley Scargill group. And once the trapping starts, the numbers of possums caught do drop, but then it can mean then when you start a new line of traps and there are a huge number of possums. So in areas like that we're suppressing them, but certainly not eliminating them. So it's got to be constant, and also trapping is becoming more sophisticated with sensors and ways to know that you can put traps out and not trap anything, think it's no, they're not there, but they are, because the damage is everything. It's also important to do some monitoring, like are you hearing more bird life and what's or less damage to the vegetation. So it's sort of a multi-pronged thing, and I've been learning a lot about trapping lately too. So yeah, possums in areas are really.
But I would also throw in the deer as well. I think deer are a real
Definitely.
increasing threat, and certainly Miles has reported on the Kiwi covenants. Things that have bounced back really well are suddenly understories being raised to the ground.
Yeah, that's heartbreaking.
Yeah, there seems to be an
And
increasing
quite
problem.
mature trees.
Can I just ask one supplementary question through the chair? When did you see the increase? When would that be relevant? Was there an increase period and noted point where you go, actually, we've seen a jump at this point, or has this just been a general constant progression of issue?
Again, probably Jamie is the person to talk to in Miles, because I know he goes out trapping a lot, but it's become that nationally it is a very big issue, and a lot of people saying we need a national deer. So there's various pockets of native bush, and also of course it affects productive farms as well.
People have talked about causal factors. So when the harvesting of wild meat and export became unviable after COVID,
That's what I was looking for, thank you.
basically suddenly, because before then, if someone had a deer or pig problem, they'd ring up the person with the helicopter and the refrigerated truck, and they'd come and have a clean out. And that just stopped. And so that's probably what it is. There's no longer that pressure.
Oh, and as far as possum is concerned, I thought Osprey were doing trapping when it was, the possums and TB. But I think they've pretty much pulled out of this area now.
I haven't seen them for 10 years.
No.
That's
Thank
great.
you.
So that gives, thank you. I'll go to Dave and then come to you, Steve.
Long association with you going back over the years, I've probably got about 10k of river banks, and know that the problems of planting and maintaining, and so I really sympathise with the work with weeds and involvement around my work. Pretty interested in this biocontrol of Old Man's Beard. I don't know if it's going to be a hope like radical control, because Old Man's Beard is an absolute nightmare. Shame I'm not going to be there, because I'm probably going to be in our one paradise in New Zealand, Great Barrier Island, on the 28th of when you've got it on. I just locked here, so I'm interested in Old Man's Beard is just a nightmare.
Yeah, there's what the whole weed thing is like we've got to protect the areas where we know we can actually make a difference and keep it at bay. But I guess there are some areas.
And willows in the streams.
Well, and there's a spread of a new different kind of willow called purple willow. It's not just your crack willow and your grey willow.
Flax and trees.
I'm going to take two more questions and then we'll see how we're going. So thank you, Steve.
Yeah, thank you. Just through the chair, thank you so much for that. Mike, you mentioned when you were speaking that the RMA is not helpful to biodiversity. So what then, in your view, your opinion, is going to be helpful for biodiversity if the RMA isn't?
We ponder this all the time. The answer is, if I knew, then I'd be telling people, because we really need to do something better. What has happened is you can blame the RMA, but really it's a complex interaction between regulations and agencies, whether it's the council or Department of Conservation and Environment Canterbury, which has happened for 40 years. And ultimately where we are now is there's been a loss of trust in authority. And that loss of trust has been particularly profound in the farming community. And you'll often find people who have a real connection to the land and would care deeply for biodiversity. But anything that comes from an agency or external authority is just not trusted now. And until we acknowledge that that loss of trust has happened, and then go, okay, how do we move forward from here? I think it's futile to try and suggest alternatives. I think in the meantime, all we can really do is just fly the flag for biodiversity. I think it's really important that groups like the Trust act as an honest broker and say, this is what's here. Here's a way you can frame it and think about it. And here's maybe some opportunities for what we could do better if we work together as a group. Yeah, but it's daunting. Our history of what's happened in a regulatory and institutional sense over 40 years, it's happened. And there's no point blaming people or being negative. It's just where we are now. Yeah.
A line in the sand and try and embrace it or make a difference as we go forward. I think, Robbie, you've got a question, and then we want to see where things go.
Really interesting. I really enjoy rivers in particular, and one thing that seems to me to be relatively recent, I guess we can call it evolution, when the seagulls decided they didn't like seafood and they decided they would become river gulls, are they pushing these other terns and things out? Or it seems to be relatively recent, but it's quite pronounced now.
So there have been projects of the Department of Conservation to cull the blackback gulls.
It's just the blackback gulls, the other two are quite endangered.
Yeah, because they know that when they build up to such high numbers when the other bird species are nesting, they'll just hunt them and they want to eat them. They raid the nest. Yeah.
And that sort of happens in that life cycle, doesn't really take out the possums and the stoats or the rats grow, and because they're eating, so it's just getting the balance of trying to manage everything, isn't it?
There's some gross videos if you have the stomach for it. Baby birds.
So we're going to have one final question here from Vince, and then we'll wrap up.
Thank you on the great work you've done. I've sat around this table for over 20 years, and it's just good to see how we've migrated from, with ECAN, we used to have rules and regulations, and there was just headbutting all the time. But now farmers are working together, like Jamie and that. He was one of the main instigators, always, and it's great to see how it's all working, and I take my hat off to you. You've done it.
Thank you.
Doing a good job. It's getting everyone together, and we're all seeing the same problems. When I read all your problems, I think, yep, you're on.
Sorry, Murray. One topical thing which actually shows an outcome. 70% of audits for farm environment plans are now A grade versus a number of years ago. Might know what I'm talking about. So that actually shows a quantum movement.
That's cool. That's a great place to come. Thank you, Vince, for raising and acknowledging the work, because I'd agree with that. And Dave, the shift in understanding from landowners has been significant as they understand that actually that ecology doesn't sit in a silo. It actually has to work across boundaries, doesn't it, really? So, but I just want to also, you've talked, Rima, I know, I've written Spur Valerian here because, Rima has taught me a lot about that and where it's in its invasive places, and, so it is about acknowledging that incremental understanding, and that how we can take that new understanding and support the work that you're doing. So, thank you for coming along. I think you've aided our understanding better, and I'm sure that there will be some natural interest to attend the workshop on the 28th. And just really appreciate what you've done. I think we've got to be coming up. Maybe, I don't know, the funding thing seems to be something that you've talked about, but you will also appreciate we're in a local government's in a sort of a bit of a time of quandary as well. So we appreciate the information you've provided with us today, and we'll see where those conversations go, but acknowledge everything that you've been doing. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Radio, councillors, we now will adjourn our meeting, and if you can break, we will break for morning tea, but we will be back for a workshop, and we need to reconvene at 11:15 AM. AM. Okay. Now,
Oh, yes.
so we're going to adjourn, have morning tea, adjourn, we've got a workshop on long-term plan, and at 11:15 AM this morning, we've got our second presentation. So if I can please ask that you be back in the room for a presentation on long-term planning after morning tea at probably 10:50. Thank you. Looking to represent what ZTA, and I guess you've come with a presentation of matters of interest that will be eagerly awaited by our fellow councillors here in Whangarei. So yeah, it's great to have you with us, and we look forward to, we've got about half an hour set aside for your time frame, so we'll see how that goes, but we'll have flexibility around that as well. But maybe it's a good idea from a introductory process that perhaps we just go around the room and get councillors to introduce themselves, and just in that context consider where they live and how they contribute to the district of Whangarei. James sits on the Regional Transport Committee alongside myself and a few others, so he's not unfamiliar with some of the issues that happen in our district. And I'd have to say that James has always been a strong supporter to us and helping us to achieve the benefits from a roading network perspective for our district. So thank you for that, James. Maybe a quick introduction around the room. If I start here with Fiona and then whip round, and that'd be great. Thanks, Fiona.
Hi, Fiona Harris, East Ward Deputy Mayor.
So that's what I do.
Really don't.
I
used to work volunteer, so.
No introduction.
Ground dairy farm.
Thank you, Dave.
Chris Garthy, Westwood.
Julie White, third term councillor, South Ward, and Broomfield Amberley.
Steve Hutz, South Ward councillor.
I'll introduce us in a second.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, Brett Jones, I reside here in the South Ward.
Perfect. Chris Scarlett, West Ward, up the Inland Road.
Excellent.
Hi, Vince Daly. I farm up at Chivia.
Good.
Robert Broughton, Hamley here in the South Ward.
Fantastic, and our excellent staff, Hamish, Jason, Judith and Claire sitting in with us, and of course we've got Graham who keeps us all in line, which we're very grateful for. But how about we hand over to you, James, and your team, and you'll take us through your presentation and with a bit of Q&A at the
Keep
end.
my watch in front of me so I know where
Yeah, look, we've got some
Probably
flexibility, that's not a problem. Okay.
Okay, thanks, Murray. Thanks very much. Thanks for having us. As Murray said, I've got a bit of a presentation. I will try to do it at a rapid pace because I find that it's always in the questions that the real gold lies. And in terms of the presentation, it's really in two halves. I'm at the moment busy running around councils before Christmas and since, because I cover Canterbury, West Coast, Otago, Southland for NZTA. I appreciate there's a few councils in there. But basically just simply trying to set the scene. The land transport system is quite complicated. We can do nothing except in partnership. Yes, we fund an awful lot of things, but nothing in the local world works without councils. We have to stay in dialogue fairly regularly. It's really important, I think, that we set the scene about how the system works and give you the easiest opportunity to understand where and how you can influence, and when to make a noise and when might not be the most useful. The other bit, though, that we're fiercely conscious that it's worth updating you on, and it's why Nicola on my left and Brendan on my right here. Nicola is comms on the project and Brendan's the project manager, is we should give you an update on Belfast Pegasus and the Wooding bypass. So you understand where we're at in that project and what you can expect, what it looks like from where we stand today, and perhaps a few questions about where we're headed on that as well. And we've got a video fly through of that project to show you amongst other things. If I use the clicker, is that gonna?
I probably should just say that one councillor absent today, Tom Davies, and he lives in Hammer Springs. So just a context of where we all fit into the district.
And also we're saying, look, I'm reasonably involved in the district, and that I work pretty closely with everyone involved in the destination management. So try to stay as informed as I can about district needs, particularly in that instance from a tourism point of view. So look, just first up, in NZTA, we've painfully recognised we're a very complicated organisation. We do quite a lot of things. There's a lot of bits to us. We are often seen from councils as a source of funding. Yes, we are a very important source of funding. We get that, but it's not the only part of the system that we run and operate. We are established under the Land Transport Management Act 2006. But we've got a broad sweeping role across the land transport system, and probably best if I just throw it up on this slide, right? So we are a planner of the system. We try to maintain on behalf of the country, including where we can, absorbing the views of councils. We try to maintain a 30-year plan for the land transport system. We're busy updating that at the moment. We all recognise that different projects can happen at different times, but what the system is likely to need over 30 years, given what we know about population growth and change, and what we know about weather and risk and natural hazards and things like that, that's at a macro level, it's a fairly fixed picture. We are, as I say, an investor. We spend very large sums of money. I've got sums, I think, in a slide coming up, but it's somewhere in the order of, and it is order of $30 billion over each 3-year cycle. We're spending more money on the land transport system this cycle than we've ever spent. I expect that to grow next time round, and it's growing at a pace faster than inflation. We are a regulator. We have some forms of statutory independence when it comes to that regulation, so that it is a bit sealed off from other parts of the business at times. And some of that regulation we receive from ministers or the ministry. So for example, speed. We don't write the speed regulation, but we do enforce it. And indeed, including enforcing it on ourselves, because like you, we're a road controlling authority. We manage, it's the second from the bottom one, we manage the state highway network, which is the Crown's most valuable asset, most valuable single asset, which is valued on the Crown books at somewhere around $80 billion at the moment. We're a deliverer. We deliver major capital projects on behalf of the Crown. They are our projects, they're state highway projects, but they're not exclusively. We're busy working through with Ashburton District at the moment, the delivery, hopefully, of their second Ashburton Bridge. They've got no expertise in large capital projects like that. It makes sense for us to be able to say, hey, look, we can probably do that for you. There's a few funding bits in there that make an extra reason for us to do it, but nonetheless, we are a good capital project deliverer. And increasingly, the bottom one is worth calling out. We do try to recognise that day-to-day citizens deal with us all the time, and we do have to have some focus on customer service, whether that's in terms of just getting your driver's licence reissued, or frankly the delays we cause you by the disruption that inevitably happens somewhere on the network at any time. That comes with a cost. You're all trying to go back to business, and sometimes we haven't always kept that sort of disruption front of mind. And it's not as though we have freedom to completely take that disruption away. We don't. We close the road when we need to close the road, and sometimes that's completely unavoidable. But we should have a care with how we do it and an understanding of the impacts that we're having on people, and make it easy for people to understand what we're doing and to communicate if we've got it wrong. Briefly, I mentioned the LTMA. I just want to dwell on it because it's going to probably circle back to every other remark I make. We are a Crown entity. We're a Crown agent, so it is statutorily our job to give effect to Crown policy. We've got freedom of movement in some regard. For example, our board has statutory independence to make investment decisions, but insofar as it gives effect to Crown policy. So it's not legal for ministers, unless they come with a checkbook, to tell us to build a particular road. As far as they can legally go is tell us to effectively improve a particular stretch of road. What we then choose to do there is statutorily independent. But as I say, that comes with a fair number of caveats, not least of which where the money is coming from, which I will get to. Our regulatory function is largely statutorily independent. We're required to make independent decisions. We have authority to establish toll roads. We administer tolling in our back office, which we're busy upgrading, because one of the pieces of Crown policy is that we look at establishing more toll roads in order to widen the revenue capture. And we regulate things, all aspects of the system, drivers, vehicles, entry, exit of the system. This document here, which Mari's sick of me carrying around because I carry around to almost every meeting I go to and then inevitably bring it around away from the face of Mayors. This is the government policy statement on land transport. It's the principal vehicle, but it's not the only one for that Crown policy. So ministers issue this document usually every 3 years, and this one is the 24 to 34. It covers a 10-year span, but it's issued every 3 years, much like the LDP cycle you're all used to. And tells us from the point of view of ministers what it is they want us to do and how it is they want us to do it. This one in particular is quite confining. Simeon Brown, who was the Minister of Transport who issued it, really went probably as far as the legislation will allow in terms of telling us not only what but how to achieve what government wants us to do within the bounds of our independence. And many of my conversations with councils inevitably touch on, we'd love to do that, or we'd like to do that, but the GPS requires us to do it in a particular way. Because that is the view that the minister took when he came into office. Said, no, look, you've had too much freedom, you haven't done this, you've done too much of that. I'm going to tell you, you must do it in this way in order to ensure that it is done. And the easiest example of that is if I slip to the next slide. So one of the things this document does always is sets out the total expected funding that we're going to receive over 3 years, and then allocates it into activity classes. Just think of it as funding buckets, funding streams, right? And the minister sets both the minimum amount our board can invest in that category and the maximum amount our board can invest. So it sets a range. And then our board gets the independence to decide the unders and overs within that, right? But one of the tricks the minister played this time around is he split. You can see it in the first two, the state highway improvement, the second and third, state highway pothole prevention, and then state highway operations. And then the next two after that, local road next two on from that, the other end, local road pothole prevention and local road operations. Those four, two state highway and the two local road ones, used to be one each, one for state highway and one local road. And we had freedom, actually as did you, relatively speaking, within those categories to allocate money as to our need. The minister came in, you'll all remember, and said, there are too many potholes. Road controlling authorities haven't spent enough money managing the condition of the pavement. Split those two and said, look, I'm going to require you to spend at least this amount of money on, effectively, of course, pothole prevention, but pavement and drainage works. The rest of the money, the operations side of things, that's what you get to do for everything else that you do in your operational category. And that's everything from weed control, which comes out regularly in my conversations with councils, to bridge inspections and those sorts of operational activities. And we absolutely have therefore invested more in pavement condition, and may not always feel like it, but I tell you the pavement condition is improving, but it will take probably a decade of increased investment to get pavement conditions back to where the minister would like them to be when they started to slow. But it does mean that we've all faced, and we certainly face it, and especially if for towns like Amberley, where the state highway runs through it, and it's usually a state highway interface in terms of people's first experience of a town. We don't have as much money as we would like to spend keeping things looking good. Looking good is not a core category that we are trying to chase under the government policy statement. I can list you a list of towns, you guys haven't recently, but you know, who are corresponding with me about the state of that roundabout, all the weeds there and the poor impression it's giving to visitors. And all I can say is, yeah, get it, we'll do what we can within the money that we've got, but we are constrained. We don't have, in that sense, freedom of action. We are constrained by government policy to spend the money the way the minister's told us to. Look, there's lots of different nuances in that, but that's a live example that comes up regularly in how the minister can confine our freedom of action. Oops. So the minister issues the government policy statement. The current minister is busy drafting the next one now. And I would expect councils and the public to see a draft of that for comment probably May, maybe June. Certainly, probably, I would hope no later than that. And I would encourage you to spend time with your officers working out where the fish hooks might be for you and submitting on that, because it materially impacts our ability to operate the system over the time it's operative. The new one though, so it comes out May, June, I would expect whatever happens in November, whether it's a return of this government in some form or it's a change, there will be an update made to the draft GPS post-election to take account of whatever was promised equivalent to the election. And the new GPS won't take effect until the middle of next year. So we've got a reasonable amount of time from May, say this year, to be in dialogue with ministers about what works, what doesn't, what you'd like to see, what you wouldn't. Most councils that I speak to, for example, would like it to be easier to get bridge replacements over the line. We've got a lot of ageing structures across the country. We certainly have a lot of ageing structures in the South Island, both state highway and local. I know this district is impacted by state highway bridges that are ageing, and you've got some of your own. We certainly will be representing to ministers that we would like it to be easier. We would like them to find money that we can allocate to structure replacement, and I know many districts would like to see the same. So that's an example of something that you might wish to pick up when it comes to the GPS. But whatever it is, once it's issued, the GPS then flows into this document. This is the bit that matters the most to you guys. So we are required by September next year to issue the next National Land Transport Program. And all of the work we will do between now and then is geared towards delivering that. That will list all of the state highway projects that we think we can fund. At the moment, it's a 3-year document. All of the signals, including the requirement in this GPS, say that we're moving to 10-year programs. Hopefully that will align better with LTPs and your capital program, give you a bit more certainty about your out years in terms of what we can co-fund. But it contains our program, but it also contains your program. And if the project in particular is in the NLTP, it's not the dead cert at that point, but it is the necessary requirement for us to then co-fund you once you are actually ready to proceed with the project.
Conway Bridge is
There you go.
fair and
See?
reasonable example of that.
Fair and reasonable example. Perfect example. In how we co-fund is by way of a funding assistance rate, which we haven't indicated what your FAR rate will be for the next 3 years. I'd expect us to do that for you this year. We do adjust them every cycle, but they range around the country from 51 to 88%, largely based on the deprivation of the population in the district. So that 88%, that's the Chathams. The most common financial, funding assistance rate is 51. It's just the way that works. Bullers up in the low 80s, for example. Southland District, by way of furthering the conversation, lobby strongly. They would like a much wider band applied because their contention is that the current system favours Auckland and keeps Auckland at 51 rather than letting Auckland drop lower relative to everybody else, which would therefore mean more money was available for your programs as opposed to Auckland. We'll see how they go. That is a policy set by our board, for example. So that's another example where we've got the debate. But inevitably, what we are trying simply to do is make sure that we have enough cash to deliver on government policy and frankly stay solvent. So the other thing to watch, I haven't got a slide on this, but the other policy to watch, and mayors were very vocal about it this last cycle, is whether or not we make any move to change our emergency works policy. So when a natural disaster hits, if it's over, there are a few criteria in the policy, but at the moment, the thing the most important to pay attention to is if it's over a 1 in 10 year event, and you spend over a particular proportion of your normal maintenance budget to recover from that event, we will give you an enhanced funding rate. It's not quite 100%, but it gets close, right? And the simple truth is we are now spending vastly more on emergency works in a 3-year period than we have in the past. And we're struggling, given the volume of projects that we're approving and the call on emergency works to balance that. We've got a choice. We either change our policy or we approve fewer projects at the front end in order to maintain enough of a balance through the 3-year period to take account of the events that are happening. We've actually had a pretty good 3-year period this time around. We're in year 2 at the moment. The last 3-year period was a shocker. And it's getting increasingly hard to do. But as I say, we proposed a change. We proposed to move to 1 in 10 to 1 in 20, for example. In local government, we're very clear about the risk that put on government balance sheets because the inevitable consequences, it means that you guys are paying more. And we backed off. I'm not telling you that we're going to look at it again. No indication one way or the other, but it is absolutely something that you guys will want to pay attention to because it has such an impact on your budgets. I'll quickly move on. Just to say, Murray mentioned the Regional Transport Committee. So our task over the next 12 months really as a committee will be building the Regional Transport Plan, the Canterbury Regional Transport Plan. Effectively, that sucks in your capital program from a transport point of view, packages it at a Canterbury level, and then kicks it on in the process up to us as we build the National Land Transport Program. Something can't be in the National Land Transport Program if it isn't in the relevant Regional Transport Plan. But I take a fairly mechanistic view of things, and sometimes we try to overcomplicate things. It really ought to be a lift and shift of your capital program with regards to transport. So to be really clear about that, we can't back a project that isn't in your program and doesn't make it here. So Conway Bridge, local road projects, forget state highway because only we can propose a state highway project. Come to that next. But if you've got a local project that you want, even if you are going to struggle to fund it, we really can't help you unless it's in your program. So let's talk early about how to get it in your program in some way or another to try to, if you think it's going to pop in the next 10 years, so that we can try to get there. Lastly, before we move on to the specific project, SHIP is our bit of that. We love acronyms in NZTA. So the SHIP is our program for the next 10 years. We're busy drafting it right now. I'm really happy with what it looks like in the draft, but I haven't shown it to Murray or anyone else yet. So let's see how people react when we get that far. But that's effectively our list for the next 10 years. We've got a really good program of works across Canterbury, across the South Island. The key question is what's affordable under the next GPS. Right? There is no hiding the fact that there is an enormous call on resources that is unmatched by the available resources. So we had $5 billion more projects asked to be funded in the last cycle than we had money for this current cycle. And that number, that gap widens particularly as we look at funding the roads of national significance across the country. Those 17 roads take a huge call, particularly on state highway investment. If you think there are priorities that are important other than that, by all means tell us, but also please feel free to tell ministers, because it's them that set policy. If they tell us by GPS your first priority is roads of national significance, then that's our job. We'll go off and do that. And that brings me to the road of national significance in our neck of the woods, Belfast to Pegasus and the Wood End bypass. So look, if you've been around, this project hasn't emerged from nowhere. It's been around for a long time, and getting it listed as a road of national significance simply allowed us to pick up the work that had been done in previous periods and kick on with it, which was great. We had an existing designation. Great. It's meant we're much further along than many of the other roads of national significance projects because we've got work to build on. But it is effectively running from the interchange at the Kaipoi River, north on State Highway 1, new alignment for part of it, that's the Wood End bypass, and ending just beyond the current roundabout at Pegasus in Ravenswood. Will make a substantial difference to this district in terms of access to Christchurch. And that's really why it's important that you hear where it's at. We are approved for funding for design and early works. We do not yet have secure funding for building it, for the implementation of the project. That's the next stage. And we hope that we get that soon, but we're making rapid progress on the bits that we are funded for, and that's simply the game here, right? We advance the ball as far down the field as we can while we've got money, and then ask for the next bit. When we get that, we'll advance the ball further down the field. That decision, because it's a RON, because it road of national significance, because the money in total across the whole package, the whole 17 of them, is such a large ask, that really is a decision for ministers. Our board will be unable to make decisions on funding for implementation of roads of national significance without cabinet involvement, because the call on our future funding is just too extreme. And that's fine, ministers aware of that, and if you look, plenty of speeches in the last half of last year from the Minister of Transport talking about the funding challenge that he's got to square. So that's our timeline. That's our timeline today. So prioritise the delivery under GPS, focus on value for money and efficient delivery. Those are the policy directions of the GPS. We've refreshed the scheme that we had already. We've engaged with iwi and particularly Waimakariri and landowners. That's going well. You'll all be aware that we consulted the district on tolling. It is, again, the direction of this government policy statement that we do that we make that recommendation on feasibility of tolling to the government. The decision on tolling rests with ministers. We've taken that recommendation through our board. It will be with ministers in the first half of this year. It's up to them what they do. If they tell us to toll it, we'll toll it. If they tell us not to, we won't. It is their job to make that decision. If you're interested in the whys and the wherefores and how the numbers work on tolling, we did just release the investment case on this, so you can see what we want the impacts to be. But it is what it is. We will simply do what we're told. That's how that works. We are close to starting early works. As I say, we're funded for an early works package, and that early works package focuses on, we call it seismic strengthening, don't we? Strengthening the Kaipoi River Bridge?
Strengthening, not seismic.
Oh, okay, there you go, strengthening, I got it wrong. So the bridge that crosses the Kaipoi River just really before you hit the interchange, that needs strengthening. It's, you know, if we're to put more load through there, and then just as you'll see it on the flyover, I'll play in a second, just as the current State Highway 1 bends north and heads past Pineacres, just as you pass the top end of William Street where Kaipoi effectively ends, Pineacres on your right, behind there are the ready mix lakes, the holes in the ground they've dug that are filled with water. We need to fill some of them up. in order, because that is where the bypass goes. So part of the early works is simply filling what we need to build the causeway through those lakes in order to keep the road on its alignment.
It's 180,000 cube that goes in that pond.
A lot of small holes in the ground. But actually, to be honest, it was cheaper and faster for us to do it that way than spend the time moving the designation that we already had and trying to work out a new route for the road. Right here, here is a flyover based on the designs that we've got. It starts in the south, travels north. Oh, this one, music.
Just quickly on that, that's where a lot of people get confused as to where it starts. It actually starts here on the Kaiapoi River Bridge.
You know, it says Belfast. Yeah, it's got nothing really to do with Belfast.
And then this is the 4-lane, so this is currently 2, so we're widening this out to 4. Putting barriers places.
Follow the lakes. So we're travelling north, heading towards the camp. The existing road peels off to the left. This becomes the first interchange, William Street and Pine Acres.
And we actually keep the existing Camera River Bridge as the off-ramp, build a new 5-lane for the rest of the lanes.
Swinging back north, again facing north and coming over those lakes that you're going to have built right here. So this is really the Woodend bypass proper. Woodend really merging out to our left. And we're really trying to spread the land between Woodend. Two local roads are flown over the state highway. They're not interchanges, they're just separating those roads out. And then we swing back west in order to thread the needle between Woodend and the golf course in order to come back in and where the existing roundabout is, like the modal clear roundabout, the best way to think about it, without the structure on top. But if that kind of highway goes over road goes under, you can get it in which way direction you want to control. We basically copy and then we're done. I'm sorry it's not going so far north that you get a new Ashley River Bridge. I would have loved. I tried so hard. That'll be the next task, right? But look, we've kicked State Highway 1 in terms of its upgrade significantly further north, provided much cleaner access to the north of Kaiapoi, to Woodend, to Ravenswood, to Pegasus. It will be vastly easier for residents of this district to get north and for residents from the south to get to this district. Yes, there's the matter of will it be tolled and won't it be tolled? And to be clear, we consulted on a 2-toll proposal. So 1 toll gantry on the bypass proper and 1 toll gantry south of the William Street interchange. You can just see on this picture here. So on the existing 2-lane motorway, but will be 4. So if you're only traveling part of that, you only go through 1 gantry, you only pay half the toll. There are lots of views about the impacts of that system. It's certainly the most efficient tolling system from a technical point of view, but I get there are a range of views about whether it's right proper to toll it or not. As I say, not our call. We're instructed to look at it. Ministers will make that decision.
So from that photo, you can see the William Street flyover. To the left of that photo, bottom left, is the existing Camera River Bridge that I mentioned.
And the reason we've done that was two reasons. One, we don't actually need to remove that bridge. It is at the end of its lifespan as a main state highway, but as an off-ramp, the lifespan increases dramatically because it doesn't have the load, which meant we only had to build one bridge, but also keeps it live while we're building the new bridge, new 5-lane bridge. You'll see there as we go over the lake, it has an arrow pointing to a new wetland. Part of this project is we had to create, I can't remember the squares, but wetland offset. And we also have to have lizard sanctuaries. So we recently purchased all that land between there and Lees Road, as well as the piece from the quarry. And there's a house just above the sign that says new wetland that we also purchased completely. So what we've done is we've made where between the causeway and the edge of the lake was less than 2 meters in depth. So it'll just sit there. The lakes are just groundwater; they're just static groundwater.
Yeah, they're not natural.
They're not flowing or anything like that. So rather than just letting that water sit there, we're just going to lightly fill it and then plant it as wetland, which gives us more wetland offset than we actually require. But it also makes construction a lot easier for us, cheaper and quicker. And then as a side note to that, we will also use that as the remainder of our lizard offset area. And eventually, WIMAC is helping us with the lizard sanctuaries. They've done one on the previous quarry lake to the south of this. So yeah, and then you can see it sort of heading up with the existing state highway heading to the west of that.
So as I say, I hope ministers make a funding decision. Let's broadly say first half this year. We're an $800 to $1 billion project. A lot of contingency in the difference there, but we'll see how things go. And if they make a timely funding decision, we can probably start construction of this towards the end of this year, in the next construction season. Yeah. So if that's the case, we'd be finished
end of 2030.
Yeah, I said it there. It's a guarantee.
But obviously, just a little bit on from what I just said too, with William Street continuation, that'll be revocated back to council through there. We have worked with Christchurch, wash my tongue out, WIMAC district on a cycle lane through there as well. They're doing a cycleway from Kaipoi north, grade separated. And then we will tie that through and continue that through under the bridge so that they can also continue that north. And we're also at the Pine Acres area there, we'll put a new bus stop in as well for people to use.
Would it put a clip on the Ashley Bridge?
It wouldn't. It won't. No, we'll have to deal with the Ashley Bridge separately. Look, I breathe in every time I go.
Close your eyes.
Yeah, no, don't close your eyes. That's how accidents happen.
Question?
Just where does the toll start?
So our proposal would have two gantries. So one, we've got a photo. Yeah, one to the south of William Street. So south to the left of this picture. Left of that picture, right? So down on the current highway, which is 2 lanes, right? Before you get to what will be a turn-off, but is currently state highway, and another one out on the proper bypass itself, right? So if let's say you're going to Woodend from Christchurch, you could feasibly get there. Well, you feasibly get there for free, but if you're travelling on the state highway, you'd get hit by one of those 2 gantries. If you're coming here from Christchurch and using State Highway 1 the entire way, you'd get hit by both. If you're coming from this district and just going to Woodend or Pegasus Rosewood, you'd get hit by none. We're required to maintain a free alternative, and there are free alternatives. It's just they're not nice words. They are inconvenient.
Yeah. Sorry, Chris, I've got a question coming from Pauline and then I'll go.
Sorry.
Sorry.
No,
Thank you through the chair. A couple of questions. Thanks for that that discussion around the tolling decision, because that's been a real interest to to constituents here, particularly the two tolled one
Sure.
on what is theoretically
Yep.
existing road. Any idea when are you expecting ministers to make a decision on that?
No.
Okay,
No.
cool.
Especially not this year.
Yeah, no, that's cool, that's cool, that would be crystal ball gazing, I just thought you
Yeah,
might have
right.
a timeline. So that consultation that a number of our constituents, fed into, is there somewhere where there's a summary of that?
We released it. We released the summary. We're about to release the summary. It will be released soon.
released until the decision is made
Yeah.
by the minister.
About the tolling?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay, so my next question was going to be in regards to, you mentioned alternative routes, and that was certainly topical, I know, in a lot of people's submissions.
Absolutely was. Yep.
So, I was just gonna ask, where to go for the outcomes of, that process.
So that will be able to come. It'll all be.
It's
not
not
released yet,
released
but-
as part of the
Thank you,
decision.
Chris, for your question.
Thank you. Through the
I'll
chair,
come back.
I'll come back to the statement you just made, just briefly about the tolling, because obviously it's going to be a contentious issue. We understand that. The question I have is when you look at the drafts that you've placed, and I have seen this before, it's a lovely piece of
Yep,
work.
Yep.
Is essentially if we go onto the new motorway from the Lineside Bridge forward,
Yep.
which is presently existing, the toll will clip you there.
Yep.
Right. So whilst that's in service to be developed into 4 lanes, will that road sit over top of the existing, or will it be beside the existing, the new road? Because I've watched the geotechs working for the last.
Yeah, taking the
It's a bit of both.
Yeah, bit of both.
So it's going to roll out. So I've built a couple of motorways, so I've been involved in this. So I'm questioning it. And India actually, to be fair. It's slightly different requirement. What I'm quite curious about is that with this tolling onto an existing road, it'd be interesting to see the ministers. What's the view of the ministers over this? Because I doubt you're getting any nod. And will this not cause stress in? Because I probably can't see it here. Instead, people will drive up onto Lineside, they'll take the left, they'll take the right, and they'll go round it. So you're now spreading traffic like that out into the community. And obviously, you're clipping the ticket, what a lot of people are seeing as being an existing road that our taxes have already paid for. So where did the recommendation for that point come from is the question.
Well, our requirement is to test its feasibility.
Right.
Right. We present to ministers the results of that. It's their decision as to whether it happens or not. And it's worth saying, yes, huge dropping important words there like existing and those sorts of things in terms of roads. Our legal advice is the upgrade is enough to justify it under existing legislation. But it is worth saying the minister has ledge in Parliament right now to enable tolling of existing roads. So that
hasn't yet passed by.
No, absolutely not, and nor has he made a decision either. So what I'm saying is that landscape is in flux, one way or the other. If you're interested, as we're saying, if you're interested in understanding the diffusion effect, the flow, the pushing traffic onto the local network. The investment case, which as I said, we proactively released Friday, does have some numbers in there, and there will be more numbers released as the tolling package is released. So welcome to look at that. You're right. In some places, it's not insubstantial.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
I do have a supplementary on top of that question, if you feel.
Just quickly, because I'd just like to add, we have spent quite a few months last year modelling and remodelling the knock-on effect from tolling and how that affects local roads, and we've had a number of discussions with WIMAC and iwi as well.
Yeah. I'm more concerned about, I'm not particularly interested in those areas, I'm more concerned about businesses of private equity that are actually heavily committed financially who are going to be suffering because of this. Because several companies within those areas rely on those networks, and now they're going to be told. How will they be managed?
I guess to perhaps,
for
James, but I guess would be the hope that those businesses that might have predicted an effect would have submitted on the issue as well. So they may have inserted that we're not privy to that information. Thank you, James.
Well,
I'd simply say,
I haven't had an answer, and
we won't and don't engage in compensating individual businesses who are impacted.
That wasn't the question.
No, I get that. So I guess it depends where you are located and what your activity is, there are freely available alternatives. The traffic diffusion is probably most extreme, if I can use that word, like from the southern gantry. You know, that is the one that will push more into networks that aren't currently experiencing traffic load. The difference between having a gantry on the bypass itself versus not, either way, you get significantly reduced traffic in Woody and proper from today. The question is how much reduced, and it's obviously less reduced if you have a toll on the bypass than not, right? Because you're
Sorry, I think the question's been misunderstood. I do apologise for my narrowness. Say a truck, for example, leaves, just say, let's just use Ready Mix as a site, because we all know what it is.
It's good.
They now got an increase in road user charges, increase in labour costs, they've got an increase in mileage use, they've got increase in fuel costs. That's the concerns I'm hearing from persons in those districts, just in social. It's not our community, I understand it's not our council, but my business networks are extreme, and I hear this from them, and I'm just curious as to how we can, or has that ever been taken into an account?
It's not the sort of thing we model at a business specific level. We model the impacts in that sense at an aggregate level in terms of the costs and benefits achieved from the project in total. But to be clear, we're instructed to deliver this project.
I hear that, but I need to ask the question.
No, I just want to where the judgment lies, and it really rests with ministers.
Thank you.
I'll go to Vince, and then I think one of you did have another question, so if we can
I've
explore
got
those,
two
and then we
questions,
need to
one's on
wrap up.
regulation and one's on communication. The regulation one is, in rural areas, you have the local GP. And they have to take the driver's license of people, and it really affects patient relationships, because they go to the doctor and that's the bastard who took my license off me. You know what I mean? And it's quite hard. It's how can you, because you know, it's hard to build that relationship. My wife's a district nurse, and she said, who's going to be palliative? And you say, I'll get the doctor, and they go, oh, that's the bastard took my life away, my license away, sort of, and they're on their last legs. You know, it's just, it's so.
Look, it's undeniably difficult. We've had quite a lot of work over the last particularly year, say, talking to ministers about exactly that process. That, you know, so elderly drivers reach a particular point where they may or may not be safe to be on the road, and at the moment you're absolutely right, that judgment rests with the local GP. It is difficult to imagine a system that takes that power away from local GPs. It would force elderly drivers to come through, frankly, a more faceless system to face an assessment that may not take account of their individual position. But there is no getting away from the pain that causes that interaction between a GP and a driver. But I would come back to the bottom line. We have to do our best not to have unsafe drivers, and most people reach a point where they are unsafe on the road.
It's just, you know,
yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
And the other questions on regulation, that, like yesterday even, there was a fatal between Sed and Ward, and the highway was closed for 8 hours, but there was no signage all the way back to the inland road even to tell people this is the alternative. It's happened before with Greta, and
so there's two answers there. I'll come to the macro, and then I know I'm taking up your time, Murray, and I'm sorry about that. But I'll come to the specific example that Murray raised with me last week, because I want to come to that too. In our investment proposal, one of the things that we need to keep in there, and Murray and others will want to argue that we have in there, is investment in more signage. You know, the static VMS boards, the digital boards where we can pop messages up. We don't have nearly enough of them, particularly, I would argue, on South Island roads, which are very long and you can be quite a long way from the incident, before you have to make the decision about taking the alternative route. So we need more of those. It's hard to get the money for it. We are putting more. We need more and more. The other point is the decision that individual contractors make, our contractors or the police make when they're responding to an incident. You had a closure. It was at the beginning of last week, or was it the week before last? Middle of last week.
Yeah.
Mouse Point.
Yeah.
Right.
Correct.
You know, we had a fatal up there, and we closed the road. We because it's us who done it. We closed the road from Springs Junction. You know, all the way through 7, cutting off Hanmer. Now, eventually, I went back and read the comms because you raised it with me. That was on the advice of our contractor, and I'll pick it up with Downer and then the police. And you can see the back and forth. It took them 4 hours to move that closure from Springs Junction to past Hanmer, so that people who were heading to Hanmer, they had no intention of going anywhere near the crash site, right? Could get into Hanmer, and that's simply about how responsive we are and how aware we are of the consequences of where we set those closure points.
Because it gets, you can have other failures.
Absolutely.
Because people go and look at Google and go, we'll go this way, and the poor old farmer spends all night pulling all these cars out.
It happens more than you would like to know. Yep.
I mean, I also raised with James last week around the BMS for messaging at Waipara Junction in regard to that accident that we're talking to, because actually when I went home from here, the messaging actually wasn't clear where it was actually. And how what the impacts were. So I think we could do some smart things even with the boards we've got.
It's a particular problem in my view in South Island.
Yeah, it's communication. It's only raising it.
I'm conscious that we could probably talk. We might need to invite you back another day. Too many questions, James. But I think you've got a question. If I can have a slight question, and then I'll wrap up with Hamish.
Yeah. Just go through the chair. Sorry, Murray. We understand the allocation of the FAR rate in that it's somewhat dependent or certainly impacted by deprivation to a large extent. How do you? This might be a bit of crystal gazing. How does that potentially sit with an interrelationship between potential rates capping?
Oh, it's a really live question. We kind of began to talk about it on Friday with Mayoral Forum. It's a real question we've got. Transport hasn't been, I can say, front and centre in the discussions about the reforms that are coming towards you, and yet there will inevitably be impacts across your program, but certainly on the bit I care about in terms of transport. No, we've got real interest and concern about just how you go about landing an LTP, a capital program, in the cycle, particularly when you integrate that with our particular timing requirements, which aren't, frankly, well integrated with LTP requirements. There's quite a nuanced picture there, which we don't have any detail yet on. It's absolutely one that you and your officers need to pay attention to over the next 12 to 24 months.
And how that
absolutely
with that FAR rate.
100%. Particularly if you've got a chunky project that sits somewhere in your capital program. The timing, the cash flows of all of that can have, depending on how you choose to fund it, have quite an impact on your rates at times. And there's one we're going to have to really closely manage.
Thank you for that.
No, you're welcome.
It's just front of mind at the moment.
100%. I think that we're acutely aware of what those impacts might be, and how you deliver $1 million bridge or a $20 million bridge within the confines of our current budget status. So, Hamish, thank you.
Two things, James. The first one you don't need to comment on, but it's to do with the toll. Ray, and I know you're not decision maker, so you probably say you're in shit. But, for a staff member in this organisation, coming from town, it's $10 a day,
absolutely.
$50 a week, $2,500 a year. If you win $75,000 a year, $50,000 take home pay, that's 5% of your total take home pay. And a new tax.
You're talking down in Jeff. Yep.
That's the impact.
Absolutely.
That's the people impact. So that's number one. Number two, when is Canterbury going to get its fair share of the impact? When are we going to get our 15%, not the 7% we get now?
Good question. Great question to ask others as well. My little part of that answer is to say the most important thing we can do to make sure we're best dressed to get that is to have good, supportable, fundable projects ready to fund, right? And in our programs. And I get that. A lot of that actually rests on us in terms of the state highway network because they're the biggest projects, right? There are a few quite large public transport projects that sit in the city as well. Structures is ones that add up actually once you do enough of them across Canterbury. So implore you to be ready on structures. We've done a lot, I think, over the last wee while to get the cases loaded effectively, to get the work ready to the point where we're confident in the costings and the timings and the need. After the quakes, particularly, and the last run of projects like CNC, which Brendan built, you know, Christchurch Northern Corridor, we kind of left that bottom drawer empty, particularly with regard to Canterbury. And we simply haven't had the projects ready to bid for, and we've needed to fill that up. You don't get if you don't ask, and we kind of have been a bit backward in asking. So what happened is you saw a lot of money flowing to Canterbury, and then it fell off as the money disappeared elsewhere. We've got some projects on the go here, don't get me wrong, but there are bigger ones we could be pushing on with, and I think we're in a better position this time around, Hamish, but it really does depend on how this is written. Because if this says, Minister comes in and says, great, I've got 25 running projects and they're all in Tauranga.
Just in addition to what James has said, the flip side to that too was our suppliers, our consultants and contractors. The good ones, the good members went either to the North Island or to Australia.
Yeah.
A lot, like a hell of a lot. I came from, yeah, sorry.
Half the people I've worked with for the last 12 years have vanished.
Yeah,
you know, even the head guys out at AWSP.
Yeah, it's been lean, right?
Yeah, it's very lean. We're flat out because of it. But, you know.
Thank you. I mean, Graham's just given me a.
Oh, sorry.
Whispered in my ear. I always listen to Graham.
Sorry, Graham.
Yeah, I've had a lot of questions from this side of the house, so we're going to have to give this you guys a bit of a turn to ask a question, and then we will wrap up. So Robbie, and then
just a couple of quick ones. So I'm heading out of Christchurch. We're going to go around the country. And I see this morning that AA is not going to insure me to build my new house in Woodend. So I'm probably going to think about having a look at Amberley. So you probably can't answer this, but will that move us up the list of how we sort this road out here? Because it's a big one for us. The other questions I really should make have more to answer. The other one is doing a job around the prison, and they tell me that that's going to be funded. Yeah, the multi-million-dollar project. But it's funded and then like semi-leased back or something. And they were talking about that type of thing with roads. Is that still a live discussion or likely to happen?
Really great question. We again, GPS asks us to look at those sorts of things. We continue to. The roading projects that we've got on the go at the moment, most of them aren't really fit for that purpose in a sense. We're constantly talking to international market about that. Our feeling is we need bigger scale on some of those projects. Northland's the big one that is and will be a PPP, right? It's harder, we can do it, but it is a harder task to do that to existing parts of the network. Quite a different thing to package and sell off. And the nature of our highway network doesn't make that easy. Not impossible, but not easy. Other things, Harbour Bridge might be one that you do. That sort of scale of, it's much more attractive to the international market. Come to Amberley and love the setup. It depends how this is written. Right? It really does. I've had plenty of conversations over the years with Marie or her colleagues in very similar townships. Darfield's not actually all that dissimilar, different less traffic, but our road cuts right through it. It's hard to cross. Yes, you want the condition to be good, all of those sorts of things. I need the enabling words. If all of the money in state highways is sucked to building the big new projects, even though it is small money, I can't turn around and go, yeah, but we really need to just upgrade a bit in here, there, and everywhere, right? It comes down to how the minister chooses his words. So really look at the draft. Happy to give you advice what we think it looks like when it's out, but it will matter. You want the enabling language, and then we can move things around, what have you, whether it's safe crossings or it's road condition or whatever. Did drive through and note a few things, so I will take them back to the table.
That's cool. Thank you, Robbie. Brett.
Okay, through the chair, if I could just ask, my question relates to a workshop that we had a wee while ago in relation to roading, being advised that we had a works program in place and we'd applied for this and received this. So my question was going to be, but I think it's been answered, but just some clarification. What method is used in relation to what we would request and what we get? Now, if I could just say, is it answered by the funding assistance rates, which go between 51% and 88%? And if it is, what decides where we actually end up falling?
It's partially decided by that. It's a really great question. I'm glad I didn't leave the room without getting asked it, because I kind of expected Hamish to go there if no one else did. So that's good. It's a great question. It's partly about funding assistance rates, because obviously that impacts how much money we have to put towards any particular project, right? But start at the macro level. We've got a bucket, an activity class, local road. In this instance, let's just say it's your roading, so we'll call the pothole improvements one because it's your reseals, your rehabs, and your drainage. So we've got a maximum and a minimum set by the minister. We've also been told in other parts of that whole funding cycle that we need to prioritise delivery of RONs, for example. So the board says, great, well, we can't spend at the minimum, we're going to have to spend at least at the midpoint for that. That pushes everything else, because that pushes everything else down towards their minima for a start, right? So that sets your overall, so that's how we get to the total funding allocation for that area. Then we turn around, we look at your project, your program that you've consulted on, you've put in your LTP. First of all, we need to know, is there enough money to fund that? There absolutely was not enough money this time around to fund everyone's programs. Everyone went large on their programs last time around because they rightly read the signal. So there's more money for it, and yet still not enough money for the ask. Then we do a cut based on what we know about you. And it isn't the financial funding assistance rate in that sense. It actually comes back to things like your technical audit. How good are you at delivering your project? Your program. Do you deliver when asked, or do we allocate you an amount of money and you consistently deliver only 80%? And where we could, we put slightly more on the ones that we knew had a good track record and slightly less. But that is at the fine margin. The unescapable truth last time around is everyone asked for much more than they could have, and we simply had to pare everyone back. I don't think anyone receives over 80%. I'm a bit ropey on that figure, honestly, because it's been my while. But so
can I just sort of follow on from that? If, say, for example, over the course of a couple of applications, you were getting knocked back quite a bit back, is that ultimately going to affect your ability to deliver what it is you want to deliver, and therefore going forward make it hard?
It absolutely makes it harder. I get this in the Hamish's one. I can think it's the two Hamishes actually. Now that I think about it, Hamish and Ashburton typically, because you then have a choice, right? You've set your program, you've consulted on your program. We've turned around and said, sorry, we can only give you 80% of what you asked for. You've got two choices. Go to ratepayers and you find that money from them, or you cut the program.
Or a mixture.
Sorry?
Or a mixture of the two.
Yeah, or a mixture. Yeah, sure. But with rates caps, now, okay, how do you this is hard. I get that this is hard. But if you consistently deliver less than your program, than your community wants, a back program, the one that you consulted on, time after time after time, then I guess the answer is your network is slipping back and back and back from where your community want it to be. I know there's nuance in there. I did delight over that. I get it, but
Leave the room accordingly.
We have got one question here from Dave, I think, and then we'll see where we get to.
Sorry.
No, you're right.
Well, I'm probably going to ask the mayor for an extension of this time, because James's goal.
Yeah. I'm happy to come back. I really am.
Roading is gold. We rushed the damn roading. And so I'm prepared to forgo something, and not, I don't know what's on the agenda, to James's time to be here is gold, and we save time of coming back. I probably end up going to say we're going to have to rush and go and do something and talk about museums. I've got no idea, but I'm just joking. But what I'm saying is, James, you've worked in Fonterra. I've always said Fonterra is like an aircraft carrier, very slow to manoeuvre compared to open country. That's a battleship. So what's NZTA? A dinghy with no money, or is it a fast battleship?
You're scarily close to what my current reading is at the moment, anyway. That's interesting. Fonterra is really fast at some things, but genuinely, look, the swing from this GPS to its predecessor was as dramatic a swing is we've had since this sort of regime existed in the early 2000s, 2008-ish, you know, it was the most dramatic swing of policy, which meant the most things got turned off and the most new things got started. It certainly made an awful lot of change, imposed an awful lot of change on us, let alone councils. I actually think we responded really well and really quickly. We completely rebuilt our business case process. So we've now taken all 17 roads of national significance from instruction to approved investment case by the board. A process that can, particularly on the big stuff, take many years. We've basically done in 2 across all 17. So yeah. I'm not really helping. Some things are easy to pivot on, and some things are very hard.
So through the chair,
or a flotilla of destroyers. How's that?
Where I was heading, it's like these roads of massive significance. If we look at the Metal 2, the big new road, right? And we look at Transmission Gully and the Otaki, we seem to have big workforces there doing a really good job, especially on the Metal 2 one. But those workforces stop, project finishes, we lose these people. So that long-term thing is having a structure where we've got competition, where that workforce can go from one big project.
Absolutely.
So are we delivering that, or we just stop-start?
I think we are building towards that. We are conscious of sector capacity. We certainly, if we're to build these roads, are going to need more. We are. It's everyone goes to the pipeline metaphor, and I cringe while I'm about to do it. But anyway, we are trying to build a longer term pipeline that can give industry investment certainty.
So you have a South Island team that's building roads.
Yeah,
going from one to the other.
Absolutely, but even in the South Island, that isn't really one industry. You know, you need, you know, so. But we are trying to be live to industry capacity. And one of the reasons, even though you've got an injunction to get on with the 17 roads of national significance, that you can still probably fund small and medium-sized state highway projects elsewhere, is that there's industry capacity there and no more around Tauranga. You can't turn an extra RON on there, but you can probably do a $200 million job down somewhere else because, do you know what I mean? So you can find those ways to fit projects in. It's just the more enabling, come back to my language comment, the more enabling the language, the more ability we can have to work around that to make cash flow work, to make it work for communities where we know there's real need. If you want to play the different game and simply get your project to the top of the list, that's a game you can play. It's very hit and miss though.
James, just want to note our appreciation for the funding that we received the other day as well, a couple of weeks ago now. You know, that makes a difference. That means we can get some more help.
Right.
Get more wheelie digger hours out on the network, cleaning the drains, making sure the culverts work and all that sort of thing. So it makes a big difference.
I appreciate it. But that's about come back to my that's about your track record of delivery.
Correct.
Well, would the ultimate be to take infrastructure away from competition?
I won't let Brendan comment on that. Well, no, look, I say, I spend my profession deal with politicians. I think you be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
Right? Everyone is convinced that they have the answer. My experience is that's why you're here. You're put to the table, whatever table it is, and whatever the boundary is, or whatever, right? To distill the community's desire and interest. That's why I'm actually quite comfortable with a system that says that's the minister's call. That's why they're elected. They hold the warrant. They got there. Don't like it? Elect someone else. That's you know. Yes, there are consequences to the pendulum swing, and we could do with moderating that a bit. But I don't think you should ever move completely away from that. Completely away. I mean, that's an extreme. So but
we still need governance regardless.
You still need governance of some sort, and you're kidding yourself if that can't in some way involve the community. Often elected representatives is a great way to do it, really, genuinely.
We need a toll on every road if we, you know, we had bigger pie that we're going to carve up to do different things. So yeah.
Just today's comment, I don't want to disrupt the rest of your day. I'm very, very happy to come back with people who can support in a much more technical answer, particularly with regard to your rating program, Dave. You know, I'm very happy if that's so. I'll talk about structures, talk about your structures. Happy to do all of that.
Yeah.
If that's
Look,
what's useful.
I think we will. I think we will draw today's discussion. You know, because we could circulate round and be talking and asking questions
absolutely.
at 4 o'clock. But I think it would be welcome that you come back and actually just enabling us to progress with interest the extent of Woodend bypass as we know it, as you work through each stage and funding comes on stream and you get to the next gateway. So I think with even under that, but actually with a multitude of other questions and answers, been real value in the session, being a little bit flexible and being able to push it out a wee bit. So look, I mean, I had a range of questions here and they just came out, but there is a great deal of interest. But I just want to note from a council perspective, there's also the submission out for the speed reduction south of
Perfect, thank you. Yes,
so,
thank you. Thank you. I'm really remiss for not flagging that. You're absolutely right.
Yeah,
it's really important.
I think that's the 3rd of March.
Yeah,
it's got to be in. So that will have an impact. We've had a discussion about State Highway dissecting this, but that will have a big impact, and it's within our bounds to ensure that we, well, my personal opinion, support that speed reduction south of Amberley Township, because certainly we will get a bell curve reaction to bypass and different traffic behaviour as they enter our town or enter our district. So I think we should try and organise another time in a month or two's time, and maybe ahead of the submissions around the GPS. I know that might be a good time for us to consider that in a workshop or a context of
I'm also free if anyone wants to reach out and ask questions about Woodend or anything like that.
Yeah, we'll get.
Oh, okay. Look, we'll accept that offer. I think that's wonderful, and I think today's the presentation, but actually the question and answer has been robust and thoughtful, and I'm grateful to have the opportunity to do so. So thank you, Nicola, to Brendan and to James for coming along and having a chat with us here in the Hiranui district, and look forward to another occasion. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry I destroyed you.
It's quite forgiving, so it's okay. Actually does conclude today's meeting. That session went particularly well, and answered some questions, and there was a good exchange of knowledge, so I'm glad to do that. And sorry?
I said, what a nice guy.
Yeah, sorry, thank you. I thought I'd missed something. So with that, I will close today's meeting, and we'll probably come back, say 1 o'clock for our council workshop. Do we have